So I'm going to open it up to questions from the audience. I'll just ask the first question. Kathleen, what inspired you to make this film? It's an element of the struggle for equality that we don't see depicted much in film. How did you get inspired to tell the story, and then how did you discover Thaddeus and Bruce and their insights? Tell us a little bit about that journey.
Okay, thank you. So a few years ago, I was working out. I was in really good shape. I was in such good shape, I thought I could do a triathlon. So I was like, let me add swimming, to the routine so I can get ready for the triathlon. And I met this gentleman here, Thaddeus, and started working out with him. I never made it to the triathlon, but I did make it to the International Swimming Hall of Fame. Thaddeus had invited, he knew I was a filmmaker, so he invited me to film a ceremony. A young boy had rescued a little girl from drowning, and they were going to honor the little boy at this International Swimming Hall of Fame. So I went with Thaddeus and my camera to record the ceremony, and I started to learn about the history of swimming from Thaddeus and diversity in aquatics. And Bruce Weigo, who you saw in the film, was then the executive director of the International Swimming Hall of Fame. And there's a gallery there, and he had this amazing art exhibition that chronicled the history of Africans and their relationship with the water, from basically the beginning of time through modern times. And I was just like blown away. I did not know about our spiritual, cultural, and historical connection to the water until I met Thaddeus in Diversity in Aquatics. And I was inspired by that trip. And I was combing through the Wolfson archives for another project. You mentioned it, Happy to be Nappy. I was looking for some archival footage to add to that. But I came across all of this beautiful archival footage of the wade-ins, and I started to collect them and put them aside, and then I was like, I gotta do something with this. I have to tell the story. So that's kind of how it came together.
That's amazing. We're so glad it did. What questions do you guys have? Anyone? Yes, right here.
So Thaddeus has a voice pretty much throughout the entire narrative. And it's a really, really rich voice, a deep dive into the history. What inspired you to dive that deeply into?
Great question, and some of the inspiration is here on this panel. Ken Rowland, the board chair of Diversity Aquatics, Dr. Miriam Lynch, the executive director, Maui Goodbeer, Streetwaves, and my experience of seeing them as Black people being exceptional swimmers. They were defying the myth by their very action and being. And the connection and the joy that we all share with the water and doing exceptional things at very high levels. This story has to be told. It has to restore and set it straight. So Kathleen, meeting her at prior to the International Swimming Hall of Fame, and there was an opportunity to use her talent so she could capture this rich history as it is so today, but most people don't know. So Diversity Aquatics and Kathleen's work with the film is to do something about that, to raise awareness, to tell the truth. It is what is so. Maui came from California, and he's been surfing all his life from California. Africans and Jamaicans are surfing now. Maui was just telling me about the Olympic trials. Surfing is an Olympic event. And I'll let him continue on that when it comes, I won't take up your space. And I work with Maui, working with young men, and had an experience, and now we can continue to talk about that, but it changed me. It elevated my sense of who I was. It elevated my sense of what could be. The experience I had with these folks here. and others that are out there, including Kareem Edwards at the Boys and Girls Club, and Rick Powell with the National Black Scuba Divers Association, and who else out there? Who else is out there? Okay, but I'll leave it there for now. I'll get another shot at this. Yeah.
Thank you, Thaddeus. There's another question here. Yes.
Can you say, this is to all of the panelists, this was absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for this. My question is, can anyone speak to more about the spiritual practices that are connected to water and African culture?
So being spiritual was not something you did occasionally. It was woven into the daily practice and the way you experience life, being connected to the land, to the water, and seeing the other beings and other life forms as part of this, this matrix. So it wasn't as we would imagine being spiritual today. And even the Native Americans, the indigenous tribes here, they had relationships with the water, and it was woven into their folktale and their lore. And most of this is not written. Most of this is word of mouth, is spoken traditions, is passed on and down and on and on and on. So, matter of fact, if I point her out, she's going to get mad at me. So one of our mindfulness, we do a mindfulness beach meditation on Sundays. And one of our members shared with us what the relationship, what the significance of animals that would show up. What did they mean in a spiritual? What was that representing? So we were doing a healing circle at the beach, at the historically black beach, Dr. Von D. Meisel, right around New Year's. And a manatee showed up at the beach. Unusual, very unusual for a manatee to show up right at the edge of the water that we could touch it. And this member, she's looking at me now. So this member told us what was the spiritual significance of that sign. And it was just touching. And then a week later, we saw I saw the pot of dolphins. The pot of dolphins right at that same beach. And with the mother and the adults. And so there's something called the science of awe. That they did a study on what happens when people are in the presence of something greater than themselves, or even large groups, or really deeply touched by something. What happens to the nervous system? So they said that it's actually a spiritual experience that you're having. And we had one today at our Juneteenth for Joy celebration at the historically black beach. University Street there is the organizer and the mind, the brilliant mind behind it. And people left the beach saying, wow, I was so moved by what just happened. I was so touched by what just happened. That's a spiritual experience.
Wonderful, thank you. Yes, sir, do you have a question?
Yeah, I want to compliment you, Thaddeus, with your narration. You did a very excellent job, okay? And also, I want to know, didn't we have a similar type of a thing here at Virginia Key Beach during that period of time or something like that, In fact, Gina, they're going to have an ancestral remembrance thing tomorrow morning, starting at 5 o'clock in the morning, a sunrise festival on Virginia Key Beach. But I'm not from here, but I was told that they had a similar type of thing in terms of forbidden so they had to have a black beach, which we were able to go to because we couldn't go to some of the other beaches in Hallandale and different other places, Miami.
Absolutely, thank you, Rick, for that. Actually, that was a photograph that popped up in my Facebook timeline today. I attended that ceremony 5 years ago. And this film is a work in progress. We're hoping to extend it to a feature-length film because there's so much more of the story that needs to be told, including the story of Virginia Key Beach. And then, more of the pioneers who were there, who took part in the protests, and, were able to open up the beaches and the pools for all of us.
Bruce Wego, he's the head of the Swimmers Hall of Fame, is that the same?
Former executive director of the International Swimming Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I know
He's the
he-
historian.
They had a nice exhibit up there of blacks, who swam for freedom, swam underwater and stuff like that,
Beautiful.
it was a really nice exhibit up there.
We have a question back there? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not from Florida, and it doesn't seem like this is a subject that might be taught in Florida State public school history kind of thing. And I'm wondering if this might be a platform, if you'd be interested in taking something like this, turning it into a full-length movie if you want to, and then applying that to curriculum for state history. Getting it into public schools so more people can be aware of it, potentially branching out there in the civil rights movement.
We would love that. Let's connect.
Yeah, question in the front?
Yeah, like not too long ago, I saw a film, I'm from Chicago, and it touched on the same things that happened along the beaches in Chicago.
Michigan,
Yeah, oh yeah, big time. And of course,
Chicago, Alabama.
yeah, but they had a film directly about that, and of course the beach that the blacks were given was called Rainbow Beach.
Sorry, were you saying? Kathleen, one of the things that I love about the film is the way it marries this kind of deep dive into this important history with poetry. Both visually, it's very beautiful, but also this poem makes it really moving and adds an emotional element to the film. Can you talk about that decision and how you found this particular poem?
Yes, thank you. It was another one of those things that just sort of lined up. A friend of mine invited me to one of his events. Darius Daughtry is a local poet and playwright. And I went to his event, and I heard one of his, the members of his collective, Naya Hardman, was reciting this poem, and it just spoke to me. I was like, this is the perfect poem. I have to give a shout out to the University of Miami. We have some professors from UM here. I just completed my MFA there, and while attending UM, I decided to just sort of go out on a limb and experiment, and I started infusing poetry into the films that I was creating while working on my MFA. So when I heard Naya's poem, I was like, well, this has got to be a movie. And I tried to get Naya to come down to UM and record it for me, but she was too busy. So she said, you could do it. So I did it. And I think, in lieu of music, it really connects the pieces of the story together. And, that last line about finding freedom at the bottom of the ocean, it just spoke to me.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yes?
Following a little bit in the theme, what I like to know is, I'm from Chile, so this is like very, very remote idea of freedom, because we take freedom for granted, especially when it comes to our natural resources. And I'm wondering, what is the change? I know a little bit of the history, but how do you feel now at present in terms of freedom and spiritual freedom and all the freedom that we take for granted? This was beautiful, and just thank you for giving us this opportunity.
Thank you
But
so
I'd like
much.
to know the connection to the past and the present. I mean, what is it now in reality?
So we have a spiritual community practice. Narissa Street brought it home today with Juneteenth for Joy, and we're tired of the trauma. So we are claiming joy. That's like our act of resistance and social justice. And no one gives it to you. It's our right. So we are going to move forward, celebrating Juneteenth for joy, and spreading this important. Swimming is it's more than a life-saving skill, And I'm gonna pass the mic to these other beautiful people on the panel, because each one of them, in their own right, does something really amazing to further the connection of the community to the water, and teaching people to swim and spreading the message that freedom is connected to the water. Let's start with Ken.
Hotel. Hello, everybody. One of the things I have to say is that for thousands of years, people of color, people from the African diaspora, people from the continent of Africa were the greatest swimmers on this planet for thousands of years. Then along came this incident called slavery and kind of took all of that away from us. And so you asked a question about the spirituality of it. We were really, truly spiritual people. We were in love with Mother Earth. We were people that really enjoyed our connection with the planet. And so, but there's still that dominance of the male patriarchy that came into play. And so when the child was a young child and we put him in the water and he said, boy, you better swim. That's just how they did us, when I was growing up. They put me in the water at 2 years old and said, boy, you better swim. And I went to the wall and I made it, and I've been swimming ever since. And my family is an anomaly. But the thing is, they did not want, if you look back in history, they did not really want for the females to get into the water, per se, because they would be inhabited then by the evil spirits that were in the water. But the water would be an empowering nature to the male, because they had to go out and swim and gather things like food and jewelry from the pearls and things like that. So they had to be empowered by the water. And so this African tradition really pervaded throughout the whole diaspora, whereas they went throughout the Caribbean and diving down through all, like in Chile, as well as the Dominican Republic, as well as in Haiti, as well as throughout all of that. They brought the Africans in there, as well as the Native American, the Native indigenous people of this continent over here, to dive down and get the pearls and things like that. So that spirituality has been pervaded throughout time in my family, for sure. We are an anomaly. I'm born and raised. I was born by the river, the New River in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And I want you to know that we were an anomaly. My family were swimmers. My uncle was in charge of that swimming pool that was created with that separate but equal. The Swimming Hall of Fame was built. But then there was this gentleman called G. Harold Martin, who was a judge, and said, well, we need to do something for the other side of the city. And so they built the Sunland Park pool, which is the mother pool from my point of view. And many of those folks that were swimming in that Sunland Park pool became many of the aquatic directors and aquatic professionals in this whole area of South Florida. So one of the things I have to say is that swimming has really become very prolific as far as African Americans. We competed against each other, like you were saying there with the YMCAs and everything else. I was on a swim team called the Stingrays, and our swim team was undefeated, in the Chitlin circuit of aquatics. So we were undefeated. I mean, I used to come down here in Miami and run them out of the pool. The same thing in West Palm and everything else.
So Ken is telling us a lot of history, but he didn't talk much about himself. So he trains lifeguards. My son learned how to be a lifeguard at Ken's school, so he's really doing important work in the community. I want to pass the mic to Maui Goodbeer.
Hello, everyone. Maui Goodbeer. Thank you so much for coming. Happy Juneteenth. What a very beautiful, special day. We are able to celebrate in this country from now on. I wanted to touch on a little bit of the spiritual question, because I think that our connection with water and the spiritual connection is really important. I'm from the West Coast, from San Diego, California, where I grew up with a very, very deep connection to the Pacific Ocean. Now, that connection with the Pacific Ocean and through surfing has taught me a great deal about the Polynesian culture, the Hawaiian culture. And one of the greatest disruptions spiritually took place in Hawaii when Captain Cook arrived in Hawaii. And with this monotheistic belief system that infiltrated the island, there was a time that surfing was banished. It became illegal to practice this amazing connection that the Polynesians had for centuries upon centuries. And it really disrupted their culture in a very big way. The gods that the Hawaiians worshipped and believed in, most of them came from the ocean. We've heard of many of these various names. But what we've seen is that even today in Hawaii, there's still animosity. During the time when surfing was banished, there was a lot of people that had to sneak and surf and hide, and there was a lot of trouble that came out of that as well. I came over to Florida in 2005, and in 2008 I started a foundation that teaches underrepresented and underexposed children about the ocean. We started off with surfing because surfing is a really warm introduction to the sea. We love teaching here because it's warm water, sandbar, beach break. It's very safe. It's very shallow, and it's a great introduction. And we have taught thousands of children to surf since that time. When I connected with Thaddeus, we began focusing more on swimming. I kind of was taking for granted that the children in these communities didn't know how to swim. We're tethering them to a surfboard, so they didn't really have to learn how to swim in order to surf. So for several years, we didn't really focus on swimming. When we connected with Thaddeus, and we really, really began to share with us how important it is, and then it opened my eyes to this world of disparities among children of color in this country where swimming is concerned. Since then, we have been really focusing on swimming. In fact, we have a student in the back who, in the 7th grade, this kid couldn't swim across a glass of water. I'm not sure. And I'm happy to announce that this week he's getting his lifeguard certification. And I couldn't be more proud because he knows the way that we operate very, very well. And this summer, for our summer surf camp, which is free to all kids in Broward and Palm Beach County, to learn how to surf, he's going to be one of our coaches. And so we're really thrilled to do that work. And we're just really happy to be here. So thank you so much.
I'm going to skip over Thaddeus and pass the mic to Miriam Lynch.
Good evening, everyone. This is amazing. The work that we do as part of Diversity in Aquatics is that work to recognize the historical impacts that have led to the disparities today. And what Kathleen has done, as Thaddeus has narrated and Bruce has contributed, has put it into visual form and has brought it to the masses. This is, for all of us, this is outside that aquatic space that we need to get to. So you were talking about school. So I'm a school teacher, full-time school teacher, and getting it outside of aquatics to understand where we are right now and where we need to go in the future. Because we still have big strides to make. Just like the holiday today, Juneteenth, and what it means, but we still have further things that we have to engage in for our communities. That is the same space in aquatics that we need to take up. We know the statistics. We know that 5 times more likely to drown, 64% more at risk. Right? But what we do as part of Diversity in Aquatics, as this collective unit of all these individuals and what they do in aquatic sports, through triathletes, through swimmers, through surfing, through rowing, is all founded on learning to swim. And that has been what's been taken away. We have to start at that first awareness piece, and this is the start of this. This film has put it into spaces so that we can say, hey, this is a life-saving skill, but there's also so many opportunities beyond that. And to be proud of your history, be proud of who you are and your relation, your spiritual relation, your ancestors' relation to the water, and know what you can become thereafter. And that's what this has done in this space, and that's what we do as a part of Diversity in Aquatics. Collectively, what we do is we are linking the best of the best, these minds and brilliance that have said, wow, I've gone and I've touched slave ships, and I brought the shackles up for kids to see. But guess what? Not only that, I'm going to teach you how to scuba dive and do that and bring that history back in. I'm going to teach you how to surf. You don't know how to swim, but we're going to take you those steps to learn how to swim so that you can enjoy this sport. And that's what we need to do in this space, because so much, I love that what Nicolas has done is that Juneteenth for joy. We have so much that has been challenged to us in this space as Black individuals that have said so much, you can't do this. You have these odds stacked against you. And what the collective part of this environment that we've created is that to open those doors of possibilities and to expose youth, to expose not only youth, but families, adults, into the space of what is the possibilities and the joy that aquatics brings. The joy of the water. I'm from DC, and I don't have a beach like y'all have down here. And today, just to be at the event and to be invited to the event from Narissa, to be in the water, what joy that brought, right? To put your feet into the sand, and then not just stop there and be like, well, I can't swim, I can't go further. Imagine for us to change that collective together. To be able to say, to go further into the water, to float, to be underneath the sun, to be able to surf. I still have surf lessons I need to do. And to be able to enjoy all those things. That is what we're all working towards in this space. Because we don't want to say to our next generation, we were talking about legacy earlier, to say, oh, you can't do this because you don't have these things, these tools to do what you need to. If we're going to start changing things in our community towards environment awareness, a lot of it has to do around the water. We were talking about that earlier today, is that when we can, it's all stemming from the same thing. Awareness towards our water, towards the earth, what it means to us, relation, building our history, building that knowledge, getting more community into the Learn to Swim to take up the possibilities thereafter. And that's what we're creating in this space. We're creating possibilities. We're creating the next historians. We're creating the next underwater welders, and creating infrastructure. We're changing that through the work that we're doing. And I'm so honored. I sit as executive director. It's not just me. There's so many people that are a part of this space. And Cathleen, what she's been able to do and what we hope to do, and you're exactly right, it does need to be part of the school curriculum. As a teacher, my teacher hat was like, ding, 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 yes, more people on board, yes, let's go. Because we do need to educate about this, because it's like STEM. What we've done in STEM to integrate science, math, technology, swimming's all a part of that. The dynamics of your catch, what you put into the tank for your scuba, how do you float and how do you balance, all that can be incorporated into our school environments. And when we have that possibility, we are creating those more opportunities. I know you're like, oh, I just, learned it, now I'm a lifeguard. That's a huge thing. And now you're going to be able to pour that back into others in that space. That's that same POFA, right? We're reaching one, bringing it back home. And that's what we are trying to do. That this film here is a start to that conversation that we are having here. So I hope too, beyond this, is that we are all spreading those breadcrumbs out there beyond here today.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you all of you for these great insights into what you do. We have time for just one more question because we're going to have our late shows coming in soon. Oh, okay, yeah, I don't want to neglect the upstairs. Okay, there you go. Oh, but let me just say, after this, you're all welcome to stay as long as you want and come speak with Kathleen and everyone. But so this is our last official question. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Kathleen, this was amazing. I am so honored and blessed to have met you a few weeks ago. Just give her one more hand. My statement is more like a comment, an observation. I'm not native to South Florida, but I grew up in the Panhandle of Florida. And where I grew up was very much Georgia-like. I always tell people there's a difference in Florida. Anything above Orlando is completely different than South Orlando. And so I grew up in the Panhandle, which was very much Georgia, Alabama. What I can say is that I have found out that I am the unicorn of Black people in terms of like my circle when it comes to being able to swim. I absolutely love the water. I have a connection with it. I find peace in just observing the water, but I can actually swim. I have my own paddleboard. Like, I love the water. I find peace in it, and I find the water is a place where it brings me back to the present, to just be in the moment. And so I also observed, and I'm only 40 years old, that there's a tremendous amount of fear of the water in the Black community. And when I say I'm a unicorn, like I really am a unicorn in terms of like my circle of people, in terms of being open and willing to go in the water. Even being an African American woman, like getting our hair wet, like that's a big deal. You know, you just got your hair pressed and washed and pressed. You're not trying to go get it and all in the water. So it's the fear, it's the cultural aspect. I absolutely love this film because it brought a perspective of thinking about water and aquatics I never thought of. Like, I just honestly never thought about that. And even growing up in the town that I grew up in, there was the white pool and there was the Black pool. And I'm only 40 years old, you guys, and for me to still say that there was a white pool and a Black pool. And you better believe that in the Black pool, those kids didn't know how to swim. I was one of them. So I absolutely love this. I cannot wait to see where you go further with this film, but in particular to address the fear, the cultural stigmas in association with Black people in the water, and to figure out a way to find peace and a way of being present, being right there in the moment, and just enjoying life at that moment when you're in the water. So once again, thank you.
So, you know, this film definitely has been dedicated to be used as a tool for community outreach and engagement. We want to dispel the negative myths and stereotypes that Black people don't swim. We want to save lives, 5 times more likely to drown if you're African American or Caucasian. And we want to change the culture. We want women in the water. We don't want them to worry about their hair. We want people to get wet, to enjoy what the water does for you, reduces stress, anxiety. We have a practice every Sunday morning at the historically Black beach in Dania Beach, where Thaddeus, he says he doesn't lead it anymore, but he jumped, it started because of him. And, you know, it's trauma-informed practice. So we go to the beach to alleviate the stress, to connect with the community. And it's open to everyone. So I hope that you guys join us in the water, that you support these amazing people here, and also the expansion of this film. We're planning to bring the message everywhere and, you know, change the culture.
Thank you.
Thank you, Darlene, very much.
Dr. Von was mentioned everything. And now they have a beach in a park named after Dr. Von Mizell.
Yes. Thank you. This is Rick Powell. He is, are you the chairman of the Black Scuba Divers Association? Founder of the Black Scuba Divers Association, as well as an amazing musician and just a really incredible guy.
And organized the Henrietta Marie slave ship.
The dive to the Henrietta Marie slave ship, where they brought back shackles from the bottom of the ocean that are now on display at a museum in Key West.
And one other myth that Rick Powell was the demolition diver, the precursor to Navy SEALs. Yeah. He was the precursor to Navy SEALs. So he's one tough dude. Above and below the water, he's a tough guy, and we appreciate your inspiration.
From San Diego. I went to Coronado.
So, thank you, and thank you, Miami Film Festival, and everybody at Miami-Dade College and the Tower Theater for having us here. We really appreciate it.
No, thank you for bringing us